Well, hello. How are you? Welcome to week 24. Wow. This week we're doing something a little different. We're going to talk about writing schedules. So, first and foremost, you need to know that writing schedules matter. And this is one of those topics that gets really divisive, and one of the things that gets really unnecessarily contentious about seriousness or quality or structure, and people get they feel very attacked, and it's not really about attacking anybody or knocking anybody down. It's a really simple fact that without a schedule and without structure, writing suffers. Period. If you're not making the time to write and then using that time to write, your writing suffers. Things don't get done. Your craft doesn't improve. You don't move closer to your goal. It's just that. It's not that you're a bad person or that somebody else is a better person or whatever. Structure and schedule help. They're not enemies. They're not your enemy. They're not trying to ruin you or stop you or harm you in some way. You should have a schedule. That said, not all schedules are created equal. Some schedules work for people because they work for their pace, their time, their efforts, their goals. Some schedules you might love to talk about and read. Oh, there's all these books, things that you can get where they talk about the schedules of writers from long ago, or you might see articles on BuzzFeed or whatever about it, and they're fascinating. And you'll notice, though, that if you look at people from like the 1700s, they had a lot of time to write. Why? Because they didn't have the internet. They didn't have these things that are both useful for us, but also distracting, us. You can't try and duplicate their schedule in our time period and not expect it to have some disconnection between what you need to do and what you are doing. Not all schedules are created equal. So why use a schedule? Schedules should promote two things, and they're two big things for me if you're a coaching client. They're going to promote discipline and accomplishment. Discipline is what keeps your ass going back to the chair. Sit down, there's the time, you make the time, you do the work. Discipline wins most writing arguments. Accomplishment, seeing progress made, seeing words end up on the page, knowing the manuscript is bigger than it was when you sat down, knowing that you've made steps forward is what keeps you coming back. Oh, wow, I sat down and I wrote even for just a little bit of time, and I've succeeded. I've got an extra chapter done. Wow, I didn't think I was going to be able to do that. Let's try again later. That's exactly what you need. If you skimp on one of those, if you skimp on discipline, the accomplishments are few and far between. And if you don't really make any accomplishment, you're just going to make yourself feel guilty. So we want to balance discipline and accomplishment in our schedules. How do we do that? We're going to build schedules out of the time you know you have. So that's pretty straightforward. We're not going to suddenly revamp your entire life. We're not going to burn everything down and start over. We're just going to build a schedule out of the time you know you have. That said, there's one important note before we go forward. If it's important to you, you'll make time for it. Now, when we get into this, you're going to have to be honest with yourself. That's a thing we're going to come up to in a couple slides. And you're going to have to take a look at how you're spending your time. And you might not like what you see if you're really honest about it. And that's okay. And a lot of people get lost. They get kind of stuck in this idea of, well, why am I doing it that way? You're probably, and we'll talk about it in a couple slides, you're probably doing it because you're looking for something. You're looking to check out. You're looking to relax. You're looking to relieve some of the stress or pressure you're feeling. And that's totally okay. And that's totally normal. It's all right. But if something is important to you, you will make time for it. Just remember that, because we're going to come back to it later. So how do we make this schedule? What do we do? What's the practical steps? Step one, we track your time. Really easy. Remember, the more honest you can be with yourself, the better results you're going to get. The more honest you can be about how you're don't just say, "Oh, well, I get up around 6," when it's really you get out of bed at 6:45, or, "Oh, yeah, I have a lot of free time in the evening," except what that really means is you sit down and you stare at the TV from 7 to 9 o'clock. What you're doing is what you write down when you track your time. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is break down an entire week into blocks of time. However big that block is. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 15 minutes. I've had clients do this system for, 20 years. Just about since I started, the first thing I learned as an apprentice was to manage time and learn how to do this. So you can block time in any number of ways. But my challenge to you is break time down, your whole week, one day at a time, into some sort of manageable, consistently sized block. What does it look like? Well, the good news is I have an example on the next slide. Here's what it looks like for our made-up client, Alice. Alice is not her real name, but this is somebody's real schedule. So here we have Alice. This is she. The person in this example is a woman. Her name isn't Alice. She didn't want me to use her real name, but I'll make sure she's listening. Hi. So she gets up at 5. The alarm goes off at 5. I want to say it's like early, 5:05, and then she's up, brushes her teeth, throws some gym clothes on, takes a shower, gets sort of awake, goes to the gym from 6 to 7. And then she's back from the gym at 7 and she gets the kids up. And then the kids are on the bus by 8 and she's commuting with the intention of getting to work at 9. She usually gets there before 9, but she gives herself that whole hour to call the commute just in case of traffic or whatever. And then she's at work pretty much from 9 to 5, 9 to 4 on most days. And she figures out that more or less she always eats lunch between 12 and 1. It's not always a full hour, she eats lunch from 1 to 2. It's not always a full hour. Sometimes it's half an hour to eat, and then the rest of the time she's just sort of like staring out the window, wondering if she's going to find a new job. I can tell you, as a side note, this schedule she later changed because she did get a new job that's a bit more flexible. She eats lunch a little earlier now. But she develops this, she broke it down. She's at work at these hours. She commutes back from this hour. From 5 to 6, she makes dinner. She comes in the door, puts her bag down, digs into the fridge, and then makes dinner pretty much from scratch every night. Now, she does this because her husband's schedule doesn't really lend itself to him jumping in because his commutes, I think he gets in the door and dinner's on the table. I think that's the plan. I know that sounds a little old-fashioned, but he's working crazy hours. So prepare dinner, and then they eat. They eat dinner as a family. That was really important to her when we were making this schedule. So that whole hour is spent eating with him, talking, doing homework, or whatever. And then we get into family time. And family time was what she called it. Family time was this sort of amorphous hour. Maybe they play a board game, maybe they watch a movie, maybe they watch TV, maybe they don't do anything together, but they're, the kids are doing homework and she and her husband are having a glass of wine on the back porch or whatever, but in some way she's got this hour of family time booked. Then it takes about an hour to get these kids, she's got 3 kids, showered and cleaned up and moved and migrated to bed, and then she's in bed somewhere between 9 and 10, and she's aiming to be asleep at 10 so that her day can start at 5. I just clipped 3 days out of the schedule. She's got pretty much consistency throughout. She's got a real routine. She likes it in part, she doesn't like it in other parts. And it's not that she doesn't like it because work, it's that she doesn't like it because it's routine, because it feels inflexible to her. It feels like writing becomes a luxury. And oh my God, I just don't know I don't know how to make time for it. Well, that leads us to our next issue. If you want to make time for writing, what are you willing to change? Because yes, ultimately you do have to change something. Remember that slide, that little box about family time? In that hour, And even in the hour of get kids ready for bed, well, her kids are old enough that they don't need to be sort of wrangled towards, they don't need this stuff done for them. They're not babies. So, but you can, point them towards a shower and hand them a towel and say, go, take care of stuff, do whatever you got to do. And the kids can. She just clings to an older model of when the kids were younger, needing help, wanting to be around, wanting to make sure they didn't. I think she said she didn't want them to fall and break their neck in the shower, which is funny because one of her kids is 16. And I didn't think her oldest daughter was planning on breaking her neck in the shower, but hey, it's what she had really nailed down in her head. She was going to have to change something about how she approached her own time in order to make time to write. So she split family time in half. And from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, she was going to write. She was going to have a glass of wine at 7 with her husband. They were going to complain about the day or laugh or do something kind and nice and good. And then half an hour, she was going to just sit down and write. So she made the time because it was important to her. Now, it's worth pointing out when we're talking about schedules and you're looking about like when you can manipulate time and what you can change in your schedule, don't think that you're going to have more success if you give yourself more time to write. I'm going to take out 6 hours every day. I'm only going to come home and write and then go to my day job and then come back and write, and I'm only going to write and no, it's not going to work. It's super not going to work. It's not about more success comes from more time writing. It's whatever you do consistently is what brings you success. Consistency is king, especially when you're making a schedule. So now let's go make this change. Let's go figure out what block of time becomes your new writing time. But wait, we need to have our old friend, the sidebar, come back. Hang on. We're gonna have a quick little few moments of real talk. All right, ready? Here we go. Real talk. There are no perfect writing schedules. There's what works for you, and that might be different than what works for somebody else. And even if it works for you right now, give it a couple months, it might not work for you anymore because maybe your job gets too busy. Maybe you change jobs. Maybe you move. Maybe you have a kid. Maybe you get married. Maybe you get divorced. Maybe you find a new activity that you also enjoy doing in addition to writing. I don't know. But there are no perfect, permanent writing schedules. Real talk. There are no perfect writing spaces. It's not enough that we have to carve time. You do need to give yourself some room, physically space to write. So when I make these things, when I record these things, there are 3 rooms I work in. Not all at the same time, obviously, but I have choices. I can come down where I am right now is the big kitchen table. Why? Because it's pretty central to everything. It's next to a bathroom. It's right next to the fridge. I can sit and, just kind of hang out. There's plenty of light. And in the mornings, when I'm recording this, for example, there's plenty of sun and I like watching the sunrise and it's pretty quiet. But if it's during the day, maybe I'm working upstairs on the big table in the bedroom because I want to be left alone because I can close and lock the door. Maybe if I'm, not desperate to try and record something and I just want to sit and edit and I don't always need super focus. I can get up and I can do other things or come back and forth if I'm reading or something. Then I'll work at the top of the stairs, sort of in the back corner against the wall on another big table. So there are no perfect writing spaces, but you do need a writing space, some spot for yourself. Now, if you're working with a laptop, maybe you just need an outlet and some space to type. If you're working longhand, then you need a place to store your notes and your notepads or your legal pads or your paper or whatever. Whatever space you need, it's yours. Claim it, define it, and keep it. I'm not saying keep it clean. I'm not saying you need to Marie Kondo this shit. What I'm saying is that your space is malleable. You don't need a shed. You don't need to always go to the same Starbucks and sit in the same chair at the same wall. And if you can't do that, then I guess you're not writing today. Don't do that. It's not the chair and it's not the room. It's the fact that you're sitting down and writing. Really, it's in your head. All these devices, all these tools assist you in getting the idea out of your head. They're malleable. You're in charge. Related to that, real talk, there are no perfect writing tools. You don't need the best super software. You don't need Scrivener if other people are using Scrivener. If you don't want to use Scrivener, fine, use Word. You don't want to use Word, use Scrivener. You don't want to use either, use something else. You don't need the perfect writing desk. You don't need the best writing chair. You don't need the best pen, the G2. You don't need those things. They're helpful, they're great, they facilitate, they're comfortable, whatever. But you don't need to wait until you get them in order to get started. You just don't. And there's no reason to delay just because you're waiting for the confluence of the right things, because you'll never get it. You will always find a reason to make an excuse. So, real talk. My goal in telling you all this is to give you progress and help you make progress that will encourage you to keep going forward. Straightforward, easy. If you make progress and you see accomplishment, you'll keep coming back. Easy. All right, sidebar over. Back to the lesson. When you're going to make changes to your schedule, you've got to look out for impatience as a motivator. Have to. Impatience leads to impracticality. That's what we were talking about before when, we thought, oh, well, if we have all this writing time, if we devote an entire 6 hours a day, we get up 3 hours earlier and we go to bed 3 hours later, then I'll get more done faster. Faster isn't necessarily better. It's not a race. You don't need to hurry along and do it. You don't need to take these big, giant steps that you can't consistently follow through on. Don't sacrifice consistency because you're impatient. But John, what about all these other people who are writing? What about them? What about them? Doesn't matter. They're doing their own thing. You're doing your thing. It's fine. But John, what about the idea I'm writing? What if it's not popular later? The market's not going anywhere, and you really shouldn't be writing just because the thing you're writing about is popular. Don't chase trends. Don't chase zeitgeist. Just write your thing. Tell the best story you can. But John, what if the thing I'm writing doesn't sell well in 6 months? Then try again in 7 months or 8 months or 9 months or 4 months or whatever. But John, what about if I, start writing and then I have a better idea come along? Manage your time better. Figure out what's important to you. Work on a thing. You don't have to, if a thing burns out, like if you can't get through a whole story, then put it down and start a new one. But if you've got a one story cooking and then you're like, oh, I could also do this and oh, I could also do that you need discipline to organize yourself and not just give in to that sort of sugar rush temptation of, oh my God, the new thing is shiny, I must do something about it. Because you don't. You don't. Don't drop everything just because the new shiny thing picks up. Consistency, discipline, and accomplishment are the big lessons and big takeaways here this week. Consistent progress isn't glamorous or flashy. And it's not brag worthy. Some people brag about it. Some people want that attention. You want a pat on the head? I will always happily give you a pat on the head. Hey, good job for getting stuff done today. I know how hard it was for you. Keep going. Don't give up. It doesn't have to be glamorous or flashy, but it does get you towards your goal. That's really what we're going for. Consistency. Show up, put your ass in the chair, do the work, punch the clock, get stuff done, come back tomorrow, do it all over again. Keep moving forward. You will eventually get to where you need to be. I want to wrap up this week by giving you a sample schedule. If you're feeling intimidated at the prospect of blocking out your whole schedule and then figuring out what to do and where to change and seeing it stick because you're worried, oh, well, what if I change things and that upsets people around me? Well, you're not writing to please them. That's really important. I really think that needs to be a big deal. Your writing is for you. Your end goal is for you. Yes, you want to have a career because you want to have a means of financial support, later in life. Or, oh, I want to be big and famous and I want to be on TV and I want to have this, that, and the other thing. That's whatever. That's totally fine. That's okay. But Don't let your fear of other people's opinions prevent you from doing a thing that you're passionate about. You're not doing it for them. Your job's not to make them happy. Your job is to make you happy. So let's look at a schedule that that has flexibility, but also bakes in a little discipline. This is called the 30-60-90. And really all we need for this schedule is just to understand blocks of time. So we break it into 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and 90 minutes. But don't flip out because it's not just one dedicated block, because a 30-minute block could be one 30-minute window. It could be two 15-minute windows. It could be three 10-minute windows. I guess it could be 10 3-minute windows if you really wanted to. You could break it up however you want. The point here is that over the course of a day, in one day, pick one day a week. Doesn't matter what day it is. Maybe it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe this is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe it's Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Whatever works for you. One day, 30 minutes of writing. Whether that's a 30-minute block, 2 15s, 3 10s, 10 3s, 6 5s, 5 6s, whatever. Here's what you do. Get a timer, whether that's the microwave, your phone, your watch, whatever. Something that is not another person. Some physical device that you can put in a space, maybe on the far side of the room. You don't want it to be a person because you don't want them to forget or get distracted, because you need to stick to the discipline of 30 minutes. And you want it to be a device that's far enough away from you once you start it that you don't have the temptation to pause it, because you don't pause this time. You don't pause any of these times. One day, 30 minutes of writing. But between the time you get up and go to bed, 30 minutes of writing. That's it. When the timer goes off, you stop writing and you go do other stuff. Simple. 30 minutes. The 60 comes next. A 60-minute block is 2 30-minute windows, 4 15-minute windows, 6 10-minute windows, 10 6-minute windows, 5 12-minute windows, 12 5-minute windows, 3 20-minute windows, loads of different ways to break up 60 minutes. Again, timer, break it down between the time you get up and the time you go to bed. One day gets 60 minutes of writing. All we're doing is taking the same thing and now we've doubled it. Now we're going to triple it, because the 90-minute block, 3 30-minute windows, 6 15s, 9 10s, 2 45s, all those different permutations between the time you get up and go to bed. So I know some people go, really, a 9 10-minute windows? So when I learned about the 30-60-90, when it was taught to me, the guy who taught me had a client who wrote in 10-minute bursts. Why? Because his job, this client's job, was so heavy duty and so structured. He was only given 10-minute breaks. So what he would do is he'd have, I think, 3 or 4 during like a big shift. He worked with machines, like factory kind of stuff. And he would have 10-minute breaks every like 2 hours or something. So he'd run to the bathroom, and then he'd still have it like a 8.5 minutes, depending on which bathroom he went to or whatever. And he would sit and he'd like write in one of those little memo pads he'd keep in his back pocket of his pants. And he would just write longhand for 10 minutes or whatever. Quick little burst, little here, little there. Even if it was notes, even if it was outlines, it doesn't have to be, I'm writing the 3rd draft in 10 minutes. He eventually did, but he started off just using that time towards advancing towards his writing goal in 10-minute chunks. It takes time, but since it's not a race and the consistency is king, he wasn't worried about how long it took because he consistently did it. And he was very proud of that fact. And that's really what I'm trying to instill in you guys. Be proud of the accomplishment, not the fact that, oh my God, I'm not there yet. It's not about the end. It's about the performance. It's about the doing. It's about the getting there. Not the, well, where's my end result? God damn it. You're not waiting for a bus. You're doing something big and creative, and it's heavy duty. Take your time. Don't rush. One day, 90 minutes of writing. Remember how we talked about in the beginning that there can be a lot of doubt, and there can be a lot of reasons when we look at a schedule, we get real frustrated, we get real burned out. This is about building discipline. This is about making the choices to put your ass in the chair and get the job done. If it's important to you, you'll make time for it. That's the fact. That's the idea that you have to wrestle with this week. If it's important to you, you'll make the time for it. So what I want you to do, even if you're writing, if you're writing, great, keep writing, keep going. Simultaneously to that, or if you're not writing at all, make a writing schedule. Figure out what blocks of time you can trade in exchange for writing time. Because if it's important, you'll make time. What are we doing next week? Oh man, next week we're going to talk about antagonists. Because I've talked to a lot of people in the last 2 weeks, and everybody seems to say, oh, I've got this great villain. Yeah, well, let's talk about it next week. I'll see you then. Thanks so much for checking this out. Talk soon. I will see you guys around. Don't forget, make your schedule. Keep writing. Don't give up. Discipline and consistency are king. I'll see you guys soon.